Hi and welcome everyone. I'm Brett Dunstone from Mining Green, and today I'm speaking to Asha Black from MaxMine to talk about MaxMine Carbon, which promises to reduce the carbon footprint of open pit mines by up to 20%. So welcome Asha, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Brett. It's a delight to be here.
So can you tell us a bit about your background and how you ended up working with the MaxMine guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm married, living in Melbourne with 4 children, but I grew up in Roxby Downs in South Australia and started my career with WMC back in 2001. WMC was later acquired by BHP, and I remained working with BHP until December last year. I had lots of different roles with them over those 20 years, mainly in operational technology. And in my very last role with BHP, I was helping build a new data platform to enable confidential capture, storage and analysis of operator and vehicle data. While at BHP, I worked with very talented Kurt du Plessis, who's the CEO of MaxMine. Kurt gave me a call in November and told me what he was working on with MaxMine Safety and MaxMine Carbon. And he basically had me at hello. I couldn't miss the opportunity.
Yeah.
And I couldn't wait to get across and start with them.
It does sound like very interesting technology that's sort of pushing some boundaries that haven't really been, pushed before. So it sounds like something great to be involved with.
Oh, absolutely. Such an emergence with data privacy and cybersecurity and people data. It's such an interesting space.
It's all about the big data and how we use it these days. It's sort of there's lots mining. There's lots of data, but it's making the best out of that data, which is the fun part.
Exactly.
So, can you tell me a bit about MaxMine Carbon, like how it sort of works, and just get a bit of an overview of that side of things?
Yeah, sure. So it's the latest offering, and essentially what MaxMine have done that I haven't seen any other company do before is they've built their very own board which gets installed into the machines. So they've built that so that it's vendor agnostic. So it doesn't matter whether mining companies have Caterpillar or Liebherr or any of the other Komatsu. That doesn't matter for us. We can still install the device and we can capture, store, analyze and manage that data, using military sensor, really top of the range, super impressive stack. So essentially what we're doing is we're getting the data directly off the vehicles, including diesel usage. And then we've got all these other incredibly talented engineers within the company who've worked out how to calculate all of these different fuel usage, carbon emissions, etc. A heap of electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, people who live and breathe this type of stuff. So essentially, MaxMine Carbon is there to help mining companies understand their existing footprint in a nutshell.
Right. It's really like sort of analyzes all the data and says like, what are your emissions from what your whole fleet? It's really just about the whole fleet, isn't it? That MaxMine's focuses on.
Yeah, we're generally only doing load and whole fleet.
Yeah.
And I guess what we're using, we've got 5.5 million hours, over 5.5 million hours of real data that we've been able to use to build these calculations and build the product.
Okay, and I suppose so. You've got your own hardware on the trucks and the gear. So because I know I've worked with dispatch system like a module and whatever in the past, but you've got your own hardware, so you're not going through any third party systems. It's basically your own hardware, so you're not having to interface with any other systems. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And so we put all of our own hardware in. We've even got an onboard monitor where people don't have a fleet management system. So it's all ours. We own all of our IP and we own all of the data quality.
Okay, that probably makes it easier and seamless that you're not having to do all those tricky interfaces with different technologies.
Exactly.
So I'm curious, like the demand for like the carbon, the MaxMine Carbon side, is that something that came, from clients, or was it sort of a natural sort of evolution from what you've been doing with MaxMine in general? Or is it?
Well, we definitely saw a massive push following from COP26 and the emergence of the environment, social and governance, ESG in conversations.
Yep.
So once all of our leaders signed up for net zero emissions by 2050, we certainly had a bigger pull from our existing customer base just to understand what does that actually mean for them. So 2050 is still a long way away. We're seeing a lot more excitement in this space. The ABC even covered some of this last night. What we do know is to get to net zero, we actually need to mine more, up to 6 times more what we're already mining to build the new energy solutions. So net zero is actually not possible without mining. So to build solar, to build wind, to build all of these additional, cleaner energy sources, it needs even more and more out of the ground. So it's quite a paradox that we're in, and I guess we're just trying to help miners understand what they can do now without waiting for an alternative power source.
Yeah. So I suppose it's miners seeing the need that's the way it's going, and they're going to have to decarbonise. But it's, I suppose, knowing what their baseline is, what they're doing now, and how they can reduce it in the near term, and then as technologies evolve down the track,
exactly,
decarbonise even further. So yeah, that's
exactly.
good to see. There's definitely a lot of talk, but sometimes you do go, oh, is it just the vanguard of the company that's sort of pushing the limits, or is it sort of a bigger movement within the broader industry?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we know that these new energies coming, and that's amazing, and people are doing such great work in that space, but we can actually do this today. We can start today and not wait.
Yep. No, you can start doing what you can now whilst technology comes on board.
Exactly.
And so that I know, like the MaxMine Carbon is probably still fairly early days, isn't it? It hasn't been out in the market for long, but there's been demand getting that out. Clients are using that. You've got plenty of clients out there with that on board.
We have our very first paying client, which is very exciting, and we have existing clients who we're able to share the data with them. So now that we're capturing the data, now that we're calculating it, we can actually open it up and allow them to leverage that data themselves.
Yep.
So it's actually quite an easy progression from our existing product, which is really cool.
So with your existing clients that have been using the technology previously, it's sort of fairly easy to basically extract that sort of information out of the trucking, the haulage sort of data to just, sort of try and template, what they can do on the carbon side. Yeah.
That's right. So we've basically built up a series of reports in Power BI that just really showcases to them the data directly from their vehicles. So that's available to them now.
Right. Yeah. No, that's good. So, is MaxMine, like how many sites would MaxMine have sort of be on site across the industry?
That is a great question. One that I wasn't prepared for. Sorry.
No. So it's going to be a tricky one.
Yeah, sure. I'm just doing a quick sum in my head. Over about 12 sites. Okay. 12 to 15.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's fine. It's just get around your head around what sort of numbers you're talking. And I suppose that's different sort of scales, or is it mainly the bigger sort of pits you're talking about with those installations?
All different. So all different kind of scales. So some companies, and sorry, what I should have said is we've got 12 kind of paying customers. Some of those have multiple sites.
Yeah. Okay.
So it definitely does scale. But I think one thing we need to do better is market ourselves. The product's actually really awesome. I wish I could have used it when I had the chance earlier while still working for BHP.
Yeah. Because I was sort of going I know it's probably not a super expensive system, but you're sort of going with the smaller players. Would they see the value as much as sort of the bigger
Absolutely.
larger scale pits?
Absolutely, absolutely. So what we are seeing is a lot of the CFOs, a lot of general managers are actually putting more of their strategy, more of their thinking into the capital replacement of their existing, diesel fleet. I'd strongly encourage them to have a look at what they can do sooner, because they'll actually get more cost savings. They'll reduce their diesel. One of our first customers reduced by $1.6 million in the first year.
Okay.
So it's a pretty good business case for you right there.
Yeah, it's sort of you're paying for it pretty quickly if you can get that sort of return. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I suppose I was going to ask about what sort of savings, but I think you've sort of said there's sort of good savings that your clients are, and it's all, I suppose it's all going to be different because I've looked at the is it your MaxMine Carbon calculator, what you've got online there, and
yes,
I suppose it's how well operations are running at the moment, of how much the better they're doing things now. I suppose the smaller the room there is for improvement, and so I suppose it really depends on but how many operations really are world class across the level. Probably, I suppose that's what your data's for, to really analyze that and see where those gaps are.
Yeah, so we calculate between 5 and 20% of a reduction in carbon footprint, which equates to 30,000 tonnes per annum at the higher end.
Yep.
So we've used the average data from all of our existing customers to come up with those calculations, and that's actually how we built the calculator.
So so you use your existing clients as sort of a benchmark for those different toggles that you've got under the calculator, and then I suppose that will refine. The more data you get, that will sort of be refined. But
exactly,
it's a pretty good. I've had a look yesterday. It's a fairly good way to get a quick and dirty sort of idea of where you sit, where a mine site sits, and where the room for improvement is. And I suppose it's a quick and cheap sort of way to look at it. And then I suppose if they see the value, then it's getting upgrade to a full system, to really see where the value is. I suppose there'd be a lot more value when you actually put in the full system. I'd take it, like you really know where that is.
Exactly. So the MaxMine, the carbon calculator, I guess we felt like we had a responsibility to kind of make this available, use the data for the greater good. So tech for good, really. So there is no cost, there's no charge to use the carbon calculator. There's no charge to use the driver tree. So people can go in there and they can do that themselves today, instead of spending lots of money on, all of these really expensive consultants to come in and tell them the same thing anyway. So, they can jump online on our website, they can put in their own calculations, and they'll instantly see the opportunity print out for them, and they can have confidence that it's based on real data.
Yeah, I suppose it's a sort of education sort of process of guys on site learning what does impact on the diesel usage and the carbon emissions and those sorts of things, to really, know what does actually, if they're so busy just focus on day to day, not really realising those sort of impacts,
Yeah, so the carbon driver tree, as an example, it's based on 5 different levers. If you've heard of driver trees before, you'll probably a lot of mining companies would have value driver trees where they have different levers they can pull to help, costs and production. So we've developed a carbon driver tree, which is based on exactly what you just mentioned there around operator behaviour. So we've got operator or loader operators or payload as a lever. We've got mine planning or off-circuit travel as a lever. We have haul truck operator performance. We have asset health or maintenance of the machines. And then we have the dispatch, things like idle time. So they're all the different levers that you can pull for continual improvement and see those gains.
Okay, so it's a bit of a balancing act, trying to improve all of them, but they're sort of, they're all interrelated in a way. So it's working on getting those gains across the board.
And a mining company can then select which levers they do or don't want to pull, much like they can do with the value driver tree, depending on the priorities, budgets, all of those things.
Because that's what one of my questions was about, I suppose, the key variables, and I suppose that it's going to be, it might vary across between sites on what they can actually, what they can flex depending on their circumstances on the operating parameters. So
exactly. Yeah. So if they don't want to change their tonnes hauled, that's fine. In that case, they might need to look at their carbon rate and engine hours and still get the same outputs.
Yeah. And I know it's probably not coming anytime soon, but as technologies do evolve with electric or hydrogen or whatever sort of trucks, any new sort of fleets will sort of be integrated into these systems, so that the miners be able to see how they'll be able to impact on their those numbers.
Absolutely, yes. So we'll continue to evolve as a team, always looking for new technologies, always looking for what's next. So we'll continue to iterate and evolve.
Yeah. And so, like your database of gear, because I've sort of seen like your CAT and your Komatsu and all your different gear, like that pretty well covers most of the the open pit gear that is out there that really most of the miners be using.
Yeah, so we've already configured over 100 different makes and models, and so that's your load, haul, all of the different vendors. So we've got a really broad range. A lot of that information is available on the website already if customers want to go and check it all out.
Yep. No. There's plenty there on your website to sort of have a look out and see how it works, and look through the carbon driver tree and your calculator. So it's it's quite handy to sort of get your head around and sort of educate yourself to a degree on what does make an impact on those on your emissions or your diesel burn and all that sort of thing. I did notice, was it yesterday you shared about the XTC, the award your MaxMine's up for? Like, I've seen you have got a number of those sort of awards over the past couple of years. They sort of help build momentum and get awareness, and I suppose
always that type of recognition is always really amazing, and that's the whole MaxMine team. So there's over 50 people part of MaxMine, and so much hard work in collecting all of this data and installing. So it's really great recognition for the whole team with these awards.
Yeah, and it's sort of MaxMine's been around, what is it, 5 or 6 years, but I suppose it's one of those things that takes a while to get to a certain scale, and then it's probably primed to get bigger and out on more sites. So it's it's good to get that recognition when you're actually starting to the industry is recognizing the value of what you're doing.
Absolutely. And what I love about them is you have a lot of technologies who do a lot of their marketing up front without having a product or a base behind to support the marketing campaign.
Yeah.
This is the opposite. We can't go fast enough with the marketing because everything's already ready to go.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing position to be in, and I'm really quite excited, and I can't believe what they've already done and haven't necessarily shouted out about it. So.
Well, it makes marketing easier when you can show what has been done and the sort of results that different mines have been able to generate from probably relatively probably from the mine side themselves, that probably don't need too much. They sort of just sit back and MaxMine installs the hardware and gets all up and running. It's a fairly intuitive sort of web-based interface, I take it. So it's so there's not too much effort required from the operator sort of side. So it's
No, that's right. And in fact, they've got these league dashboards or league reports. So a lot of the customers will have a big screen up kind of in their crib rooms or in their go lines, etc. And at startup, they can actually, or shift change, they can go to the boards and have a look at how they've all performed. So they've got a bit of a gamification process. We've got that healthy competition amongst the crews, who's actually performed better for the shift. So that's very visible and a very easy way for the operators to interact and feel a bit of pride in how they're also helping contribute to reduce the carbon footprint.
Yeah. I suppose it's, when you've got the data, you can show how, break it down by individual, operators. Yeah, like I'm sure plenty wouldn't want to, see themselves fall down the leaderboard, so they'll be trying to do whatever it is they need to do to, get back up on top. So it's
exactly
something simple. Like if you don't know how you're doing, then you're not going to change. But if you know, I'm slipping a bit, then see what they need to do to fix that.
And we're very lucky as well. We've got access to coaches. It's part of a secret service, I guess, where we do actually provide that continual analysis and improvement. We do provide the coaching opportunities so that customers realise the potential or the opportunity. So we think that's a differentiating factor for us as well.
So you have guys that look at the data and just make sure that guys on site actually know what that means and make sure they're actually interpreting and taking the right actions from that. So that's
right. And they actually do that in person. So they go there to site and they do the coaching directly. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. It's always handy just to make sure that the message is driven home and that it's not particularly any new technologies, no matter how simple it is, making sure the message is getting through to the right people.
That's right.
Those actions.
The embedment.
So,
I mean, I've seen 100 projects kind of go live really successfully and then never actually be that successful a year later because there's been no embedment, there's been no operationalisation, no org change management. So that's something that MaxMine does offer, and they do it really well. We get a lot of feedback on that embedment and that coaching type support.
Okay, no, that's great to hear. Yeah, so I really think I've probably covered. Everything I had down on my list. So
perfect.
If you had anything else that I might have missed that you think is worth covering off on, or if you've pretty well covered most of it.
I think I've covered it. I think your questions were amazing, so I was able to. I had plenty of time to kind of plan my responses, other than the company's one, which you definitely caught me out on. But no, I think that's it.
No. Oh well. With that, I think just say, thanks for catching up and have a chat, and all the best with MaxMine Carbon, and sounds like an interesting journey coming up. As you get out there more and more.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Brett. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thank you.
Great.
Cheers.
Bye.
See ya.